This is Nightmare Chronicles, where the stories you were never meant to hear finally surface. Tonight's tale is taken from a sealed government incident file quietly removed from public records in 1987. The town of Greywell was erased from every map, but fragments of testimony survived. Fragments they hoped no one would ever read. What you're about to hear is the only surviving account from an employee who witnessed the downfall of the town from the inside. Some claim this story is an urban legend. Others swear it explains disappearances that still happen today. Whatever you choose to believe, turn down the lights, turn up the volume, and remember, some towns vanish for a reason. In 1987, an entire town called Greywell vanished from every map. No earthquake, no wildfire, no evacuation order. One day it was there, a boring little dot between two more interesting cities. The next day, road signs pointed to nothing, train routes skipped a stop, and every official you asked would stare at their paper and tell you it was a typo, a clerical error, a mapping correction, a cartographic anomaly. That's the official story. My name is Daniel Rook, and I'm one of the only people who knows what really happened to Greywell. Before the town disappeared, I worked for the municipal sanitation department. That's the polite way of saying I picked up everyone's trash and swam in the things the rest of the world pretended didn't exist. If you want to know the truth about a town, don't talk to the mayor, talk to the garbage man. We see everything. We just don't usually live long enough to talk about it. Back then, Greywell was painfully ordinary. One grocery store, one school, one church, one bar, 3 liquor stores, because we had our priorities straight. The biggest excitement in town was when Mrs. Kellerman's cat escaped and everyone pretended to care. I had the same route every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the same streets, the same cracked sidewalks, the same overflowing bins where people threw away things they really didn't want anyone to see. On the night everything started, I was working overtime because the meat packing plant had accidentally thrown out an entire freezer of expired sausages. It smelled like something that had died, come back, lost the will to live again, and then been boiled. I was just finishing up when I heard the crash. Metal shrieked, glass exploded, something heavy slid along asphalt with a grinding roar that made every dog in town shut up at once. I killed the truck engine and listened. One more dull impact, then nothing. The road in front of the town hall was blocked by a tractor trailer jammed sideways across both lanes. The cab was smashed into a light pole. The trailer had split open like someone had attacked it with a giant can opener. White vapor hissed from the tear, rolling down onto the pavement like fog that knew exactly where it wanted to go. There were no logos on the truck, no company name, no license plates, just matte black paint that didn't reflect the street lights at all. 3 steel barrels had rolled out of the ruptured trailer and come to rest near the curb. Each one was dented and scuffed, but intact, and each one was labeled the same way, not with a printed stencil or warning label, but with a strip of silver duct tape and big ugly handwritten letters. Biohazard. That was it. No symbols, no numbers, no serial codes, just duct tape and panic handwriting. If someone labels something biohazard with duct tape and a marker instead of a proper sticker, whatever's inside is either not dangerous at all, or so dangerous that they didn't have time to do it properly. By the time I got close enough to read the tape, people were already gathering. Of course they were. Humans see white vapor and hear the word hazard and think, I should stand closer to this. At the front of the growing crowd were Mark and Leon. Every town has 2 guys who will definitely die first in a horror movie. Ours were Mark and Leon. If there was a fence that said, do not climb, they were already halfway over it. If there was a red button that said do not press, they were arguing about who got to press it twice. They stared at the barrels. They laughed at the duct tape. They poked the metal with their boots. Probably just smoke machines, Leon said, like at the high school dance, government fog. Maybe it's drugs, Mark grinned. Secret government party drugs. I told them to step back and wait for the police. They told me to relax and get a hobby. Leon grabbed the valve on the nearest barrel. Watch this, he said. I'm about to turn Main Street into Studio 54. The valve squealed. Whatever was inside gurgled. Then the lid blew. A thick green cloud erupted from the top with a wet, choking sound, spraying Leon in the chest and face. The mist rolled outward in a wave, heavy and oily, clinging to everything it touched. It smelled like chemical cleaner, rotten fruit, and something that had died confused and angry. People screamed and stumbled back, everyone except Mark and Leon, who stood there in the middle of the cloud. Mark held out his arms and spun in a slow circle, laughing like he was at a rock concert. Leon tried to cough, but it sounded wrong, wet, bubbly. "Smells like my ex's cooking," Mark shouted. Leon sucked in a deep breath of the green fog to show how tough he was. He stopped laughing. The mist thinned faster than I expected. Within a minute the air was clear, the truck was just a wreck, and the 3 barrels lay where they'd fallen. The only sign anything had happened was a faint green sheen on the asphalt, and the fact that Leon was very, very quiet. The police arrived almost 2 hours later, which is about average for Greywell on a weeknight. They put up some half-hearted caution tape. They took statements they weren't interested in. They promised a hazmat team was on the way. By morning the truck was gone. The barrels were gone. The asphalt had been scraped and washed. The puddle of green that had soaked into every crack, that wasn't gone. It had just gone underground. People started feeling it before anyone saw it. Restless legs, tingling fingers, ears that wouldn't stop ringing, a hunger that felt like it came from behind your ribs instead of your stomach, and an urge to lick things. Not taste, not nibble, lick. People licked spoons right out of the sink, licked their car windows, licked door handles. One guy licked the side of the bus. Everyone joked about it. Must be the new flu. Maybe it's rabies. Maybe it's mass psychosis. By day 2, the jokes stopped landing. I woke up around 5 in the morning to a sound that didn't belong in my apartment. A wet, sticky slapping, like someone kneading dough made of raw meat and glue. I turned on the light. The wallpaper next to my bed rippled. For a moment I thought it was a trick of the eyes. Then the bulge moved, pushing outward from inside the wall. The paper stretched until it tore with a soft pop, and a thin, green, translucent tendril slid out. It waved slowly in the air, tasting, feeling, searching. Then it retracted back through the tear and vanished. The wallpaper sagged back, leaving only a damp stain. I did the bravest thing I could think of. I went to the kitchen, made very strong coffee, and tried very hard to pretend I had imagined it. On my route that morning, Greywell looked almost normal. The sky was overcast, but calm. The birds were quiet, but sometimes they were quiet. Life went on. Except it didn't. At the bakery, the sign hung crooked and the door stood half open. The smell of fresh bread was drowned by something heavier. "Mr. Hull?" I called. He shuffled out from the back, sweating through his flour-coated shirt. He kept his right hand crammed deep into his apron pocket. "You okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said too quickly. "Busy. People are panic buying bread. You know how it is. Gas leak, news, idiots, blah blah." He reached for the counter with his right hand. The apron slipped. I saw why he'd been hiding it. He still had 5 fingers, but along the side of his palm 3 extra thumbs had grown, smaller, pale versions, lined up like little barnacles. They all twitched in sync when he tried to grab the tray. He snatched his hand back, shoved it into his pocket. "Grease burn," he muttered. "Doctor says it'll smooth out." I didn't argue. I picked up the trash and got out of there. On Maple Street, I saw Mrs. Kellerman's missing cat, except now it had 2 tails and stared at me with 3 bright yellow eyes, like it knew something I didn't. On Birch Avenue, a teenager turned too quickly and his neck stretched an inch too far before snapping back with a rubbery twang. The mailman licked every envelope before shoving it into the slot, not the flap, the whole thing, like he couldn't help himself. "New system," he said, eyes a little too wide. "Quality control." By evening, everyone looked almost normal, if you ignored the twitching, the sweat, and the occasional extra finger. By day 3, Greywell went off the rails. I saw Mark again on Oak Street. He was standing in the middle of the road, shirtless, arms raised like he was conducting an invisible orchestra. His chest glistened with sweat. His eyes were blown wide and too bright. "Mark," I called, "you need a doctor." He smiled a too wide smile. "I don't need a doctor," he said. "I'm evolving." Two shapes bulged from his armpits, stretching the skin until it split open with a sound like wet paper ripping. From the new openings, pale tentacles uncoiled, slick and dripping. Each one was lined with tiny suckers that grasped the air. They waved slowly, tasting the world. One slapped against the side of my garbage truck and left a streak of sizzling slime. "Check it out, Danny," Mark grinned. "We're gonna be something better." I put the truck in reverse and got out of there, because I had no interest in seeing Mark's final form. By sunset, Greywell looked like a low-budget apocalypse movie, directed by someone with a very dark sense of humor. People staggered through the streets, scratching and licking and muttering, limbs bent in wrong directions. Skin sagged or stretched. A man crawled along the sidewalk, leaving pieces of himself behind, like a slug made of hamburger. The smell was no longer just bad, it was hostile. Imagine a deep fryer full of rotten meat and fear, left to ferment inside a sealed locker in the sun. That was the air. The TV still worked that night. Every channel said the same thing. "Stay indoors, do not panic. A gas line malfunction has caused mild neurological symptoms. Contamination teams are on the way. Everything is under control." Outside, something screamed in a voice that changed halfway through, like two throats fighting over one set of lungs. Around dawn, the humming started, low at first, like a distant engine, then louder, constant. It vibrated in my teeth and bones. I stepped outside. The sky was full of lights. Not stars, not planes, not helicopters. Dull pulsing orbs hung above the cloud line, drifting slowly into position over the town like sharks circling a bleeding animal. Where the light from the orbs touched the streets, everything looked sickly and washed out. People came out of their houses, even though they'd been told to stay inside. Infected, not infected, it didn't matter. They moved toward the town square, drawn by something they couldn't name. I watched from inside my truck at the edge of Main Street, hands locked around the steering wheel. One of the orbs lowered, a column of pale green light. Something slid down through it. It didn't walk. It didn't float. It sagged, like gravity hadn't decided what to do with it yet. When it landed, the ground squelched. The thing that stood up looked like a failed anatomy lesson dumped into a butcher's apron. It had limbs, sort of, and a torso, sort of, and where a head should have been, there was just a wide circular mouth full of dull, grinding teeth. No eyes, but you could feel it looking at you. More shapes slid down behind it. A whole squad, each carrying metal cases, humming devices, and one with a glowing tablet. The tablet flickered with alien symbols, then automatically shifted to English text. At the top was a logo, a stylized mouth wrapped around a planet. Under it the words GLAARGFOODSERVICES. New product line, human deluxe, extra crunchy. My brain refused to process it for a second. These weren't invaders, they were contractors, a supply chain. The creatures advanced through the crowd with calm professionalism. Some of the infected walked willingly into their waiting arms, bodies soft and pliable. Others tried to run, but their mutating legs failed them. The creatures didn't chase. They let biology and gravity do their work, then picked up whatever fell. One of them tapped at the glowing tablet and spoke in a voice like burps in garbage disposals. I didn't understand the words, but the tablet helpfully displayed subtitles. Texture suitable, flavor, profile acceptable, tenderization successful. Mark this zone as a viable test market. They had marinated us. The green mist, the symptoms, the mutations. It wasn't an accident. It was preparation. We weren't casualties. We were ingredients. I should have died with the rest of them right there in the square. Instead, I did the only thing I've ever been truly good at. I hid in the trash. Behind the old deli, there was a dumpster full of experimental cheese from a local professor who had been trying to push the boundaries of fermentation and had instead pushed the boundaries of bioweapons. No one would touch the stuff. I climbed in, buried myself under the wheels of crusted, moldy cheese, and pulled the lid shut. The smell was biblical. My eyes watered. My stomach tried to escape through my throat. Outside, heavy, wet footsteps sloshed past. A creature made a disgusted, gurgling noise. Another replied. The lid rattled as something touched it from the outside, then jerked away like it had been burned. I lay there, shaking, as the humming in the sky grew louder, then softer, then faded away entirely. When I finally pushed the lid open, the sky was dark. Greywell was quiet. Too quiet. The town square was empty. The streets were littered with things I didn't want to identify. Houses stood hollow, their windows dark, as if whatever lived inside had been scraped out with a spoon. No police, no military, no news crews, just me and a faint sticky layer of green residue clinging to every surface, like someone had sprayed the whole town with cooking oil from hell. By morning people did come. Not rescuers, clean-up. Men in unmarked suits, driving unmarked vans, moving with the bored efficiency of people who had done this before. They tore down street signs, removed Greywell from every map in the nearby rest stops, disconnected us from the power grid. They didn't look shocked or scared or confused. They looked annoyed, like a test site that hadn't gone quite as smoothly as expected. One of them spotted me. We stared at each other for a long moment. He checked his clipboard, flipped a page, then spoke in a calm, practiced voice. "You don't live here," he said. "You were never here. Do you understand?" I nodded. He let me walk past him out of the town that no longer existed. They relocated me under a new name in a new city with a new, very boring job. I convinced myself it had been a nightmare or a breakdown or something they'd put in my drink. Years went by. Then I got the package. No return address, no barcodes, no postal marks, just my new name on the front, written in blocky, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a clear plastic container the size of a lunchbox. No labels, no hazard symbols, just a lump of faintly glowing green gel in the center, pulsing slowly like a sleeping heart. Taped to the lid was a strip of silver duct tape. In shaky black letters, it said, "Congratulations." Underneath, in smaller print, in perfect, clean type, "Batch 2 is on the way. Enjoy." The gel inside the container twitched. Tiny bubbles formed on its surface and popped, fogging the plastic from the inside. The smell that escaped when I peeled back one corner was exactly the smell I'd hoped to never encounter again. Chemical cleaner, rotten fruit, and something that had died, confused and angry. I should have called the police, or the army, or whoever cleans up after intergalactic catering companies. Instead, I did what I always do. I took out the trash. I wrapped the container in 3 layers of black garbage bags, tied them tight, and carried it down the back stairs to the dumpster behind my building. Halfway there, the bag jerked in my hands, like something inside had just realized what was happening. I didn't slow down. I opened the dumpster lid with my elbow and threw the bag in. For a second the metal vibrated. Then it went still. I told myself that was the end of it. The next morning the dumpster was empty. Completely empty. No bags, no trash, no flies, just a faint smear of green slime clinging to the metal, glistening in the early light. Since then, people in my building have been complaining about strange smells in the hallway, about restless sleep, about cravings. I've seen unmarked black trucks parking in the alley late at night for exactly 14 minutes at a time, long enough to unload a few barrels, long enough to roll out a new test batch. Sometimes I catch a glimpse inside when the doors open. Silver duct tape, shaky handwriting, biohazard. If you've listened this far, thinking it's just a story, that's fine. Stories are safer than the truth. But the next time you see news about a gas leak that wipes a town off the map, the next time you notice a road sign pointing to nowhere, or a place you remember visiting that no one else seems to recall, the next time you wake up with a strange taste in your mouth and an urge to lick something you really shouldn't, remember Greywell. Remember the smell. And if you ever see a barrel sealed with cheap duct tape and labeled BIOHAZARD in bad handwriting, do yourself a favor. Don't open it, because somewhere out there, Clark Food Services is expanding their menu, and we're all still in beta testing. If you made it this far, congratulations. Most listeners don't. Greywell was only the beginning. And the files I've uncovered show that similar incidents are happening again. In towns nobody talks about. In places you drive through without thinking twice. If you want to hear the next classified story, make sure to subscribe to Nightmare Chronicles, hit the like button, and turn on all notifications so you never miss the next episode. These stories are getting darker, stranger, closer, and trust me, you'll want to know what's coming next. Sleep lightly, and beware the places that disappeared, because sometimes they come back. This was Nightmare Chronicles. See you in the next nightmare.